Dr. Neil Cobbold, Commercial Director for Repit. Repit, we are a large technology provider servicing the estate agent market that's actually going into those landlords. So typically, the information that we see is probably a little bit higher and better than the national average, just because typically engaging with some of the larger, more corporate estate agents who are actually part of our user base, we find that they're driving these changes and trying to get people ready. However, there's been a lot of change, and a lot of that change has actually driven a little bit of inertia in the market that we've already seen starting to bring things down to a stop, where people who are even wanting to make changes are finding that within the larger groups, within their own bodies that manage the estate agencies and landlord groups, are being told to wait. And as Luke previously mentioned, we've got supply chain issues and timing delays already putting pressure on this. What we don't want is to see this impact. So if we have a quick look, where are we at the moment? What are the government actually telling us? If you go on to the first slide for me, Luke. So very kindly, they decided to do both of these consultations. And I know we're looking England and Wales, but Scotland is also going through the same kind of review and consultation at the moment. And while I think everybody is behind a cross party that with our old stock, there is a need for us to look at how do we retrofit, how do we get up? I think in both there is a nervousness over timeframes and creating a supply and demand issue, which causes extra finance pressures for those landlords who are particularly going to be coming to you to look for these solutions. We saw it before with things such as the EICRs, whereby because of it, you couldn't actually get an electrician to go, albeit you could, but the prices were escalated. So I know Luke mentioned 6 to 8, but what we could find is that price being artificially raised because of supply and demand issues. So they're actually looking at currently under the consultation, which was open until February of this year, that they're going to look at it either under the fabric performance method or under the smart readiness metric. But they're now looking at raising the 3,000, which was under proposal, to 10, to now a potentially £15,000 limit for a landlord. And the reason for that inertia is they did state that no previous works will be allowed into the calculation of spend from when the determination is made by DESNZ. So therefore, if you've done £4,000-5,000 worth of works prior to being told this is now the legislation, you'll be expected to do another 15 before you would then be eligible to get a 10-year exemption. Now, that 10-year exemption is currently valid in England. We've had no confirmation of that in Scotland yet. So they have put out that, a third of the stock in Scotland is either tenement or flats, and more than a third are actually pre-1919. So they understand they may need some exemptions, but we've had no guidance on this. And certainly for our industry, we find that if there is no information, then there is nothing being done. And everything that I have had over my countless years of dealing with finance is risk managers like uncertainty even less. So where you're looking at your policies and your finance opportunities and what you can put to landlords, all of this uncertainty just means that it makes it more difficult for us to actually get on and do what needs to be done, which is make these homes more energy efficient and help people not only in making the homes better, but actually taking them out of the fuel poverty. We've had another announcement today that caps are going up. It's a small number. It's only 0.2% that they're going up today. But the prediction from economists was that that was going to go down by 1%. So we're already seeing that other pressures, other cost factors are bringing in. So I don't think the view of our sector and energy is going to get any less. But whatever this uncertainty, it makes it more difficult. So if we go on to the next one, and let's see how they play out. So we did our own analysis because we looked at the ONS analysis that had been done on the potential cost of change, and they'd looked at 2,000 EPCs. We felt that for England, that was too small a user base to be able to extrapolate up to the millions of properties, as Luke mentioned, that could get caught by this legislation. So we did it and we managed to look at 52,000 agency managed PRS. And as I said, agency managed slightly above the average. So we may need to look at this. 51.5% were below an EPC. That is what we're looking at, the scale of what we're wanting to get ready by currently within England a 2030 date. 2033 for all tenancies currently is what the proposal under consultation for Scotland. And if we took the ONS figures and those 6 to 8, the cost of upgrading the EPC, that's a £24 billion price tag sitting on the PRS alone, forgetting whether we bring social housing or whether short lets are bought into that. So 17.4% actually have a rating of E, F, and G. And that could possibly, if we're looking at yields and returns or financing options, it could make it potentially uneconomical for people to upgrade that looking at rent prices or yields without some kind of finance assistance. And we don't know what that looks like yet. If those landlords sold, that would mean 880,000 households that would be leaving the private rented sector. Think what that would mean to finance books, to risk metrics, to how we deal with it. We've also, if you look at this report, we've also managed to identify that while I agree EPCC is a good metric to go into, we currently have more properties in the private rented sector, quite large numbers, than we have exemption certificates at the F and G ratings. So it's great that we're going to move it up to a C. I think the problem you also have from the landlords and the estate agent with the market is without current MEES enforcement to the E level that we're currently experiencing, what is going to change when they move this up to a C? Are we just going to end up with more non-exempt properties? And for you as lenders, what does that mean to your risk? If the government is not enforcing the standard, what are you going to have as your policies to actually deal with this? We looked at somebody, to give an example. I met with an MP last week who wondered if we could bring this down to a local authority level that he was involved in, and we did. What we actually saw was retrofits were averaging in his borough at close to 200 a year, private rented sector properties, that the reason for the new EPC was because they were actually upgrading the property. So far for the year FY25, that same borough has had 35. That shows you the scale of what we've seen in this inertia and slowdown. And so that's why I think everybody is looking to every sector to see how can you help? How can you show me the enforcement? How you can show me that me being a good landlord and doing what is asked is actually going to be recognised. And finance has a way to play that. Green initiatives, and I'm sure Chloe's going to come on and talk to this as to what we're able to do, but these will actually show landlords that if the government is not going to enforce those landlords, then actually I can be rewarded by my lenders, my insurers, the people who I'm actually going can recognise that I'm doing the right things with my property. And I think that's really where the finance sector can help and actually get rid of a lot of this uncertainty and worry that's coming from a lot of the aging landlord market as to, and the newer people coming in, how do we actually make this work to our advantage? And I think that is an opportunity that we shouldn't miss.